Assalamu alaikum. This is Dr. Najeeb Ranginwala. Thank you. Everybody can recite the Sharif. Very much for coming. First of all, I'm thankful for Allah for giving me opportunity to present to you. I'm also thankful for you to take time off to listen and learn. Correct. This is an extremely important topic to discuss, and I actually we'll start my presentation by asking you a question and always end with a question, correct? So at least you will think about it and go from there, correct? So my question to you, all of you, and it includes to me also, is that, some of us have high self-esteem and some of us have low self-esteem, right? So how can some of us have low self-esteem? Because we have the book of Hikmat, the Holy Quran, the Sirah, the Sahabas and all those things. And we have the all material available, but still we have low self-esteem. So we need to ponder on that because one thing Allah has given to us is time, and that time will be taken away. So during this time, if you don't get it, you won't get it. So it's your time. That's a luxury you have. We don't understand this luxury. When you go for the prayers, namaz janazah of somebody, you will understand this luxury is taken away from you. So in your lifetime, you need to understand, and it's better to understand today than tomorrow, because nobody can guarantee their life, correct? I cannot guarantee my life, but it's up to you. How do you want to guarantee it? So, why we have low self esteem? That's the question. And so, let me go into the detail. Actually, I'm trying to integrate psychiatry with Islam and make you understand that where is the difference. And if you understand the concept of from psychiatry as well as the concept from Islam, you will understand how you're going to improve your self-esteem, correct? It's up to you, but you have to be a right concept, because we basically don't have the correct concept. So it's correction of the concept is very important. So let's go to the next slide. Thank you. So this is how which I feel is significant about. So the concept of self-esteem, which is in psychology, is different from the concept of self-esteem in Islam. These are two different concepts. I will clarify what are those concepts, so at least it's clear. Why psychiatry help us? Because we understand how the process of thinking take place. You have a knee-jerk reaction or anything happens, the pathways, correct? Reward phenomena, punishment phenomena, the pathways from psychiatry and neurology. So then it helps you to know exactly what the pathways are. So whatever you put in, that will be your goals, correct? So whatever you think about it, or what are your initial planning is, your thinking will take place and you will achieve your goal. So the goals are different in psychology if you're looking at the self-esteem, and the goals are different in Islam if you're looking the concept from Islam. Okay, so let me go into that concept wise, and we'll go from there. So let's go to the next slide. These are the few ayat I have taken out from Quran. Bismillah ar-Rahman, Surah Munafiqeen 63 verses 8. But honor belongs to Allah, His Messenger, and the believers, but the hypocrite do not know. Surah Al Imran, which is chapter 3, verses 39. Do not weaken, do not grieve, for you will be superior if you are believer. The third one is Surah Al Shams, which is chapter 91, ninth and 10th verse. Indeed, successful be the one who purifies it, and indeed, unsuccessful is the one who corrupts it. So this is you from the Quran, you will learn the concept of self-esteem, and these are from where you're trying to learn from it. Let's go to the next slide. So, from psychology, if you look at the exact concept of it, you have to go to the psychology dictionary. Do not go to Oxford Dictionary, correct? That's English dictionary. If you are medical students or a doctor, you go to medical dictionary. A lot of people try to look up in Oxford Dictionary to find, yes, it will be pretty much close to it, but not accurate. So you have to look into the psychology, psychiatry dictionary to know the exact meaning and the concept, correct? So from psychology dictionary and all concepts, it is the self-evaluation to which an individual values and accept the self-belief. These are very important factors you have to understand. It's a self-evaluation. So everybody evaluate to individual value. Now, these are materialistic value, the fame, the money, and all those things, correct? And how much you believe in it. That's what psychology talks about self esteem. It comes from the conscious and unconscious mind. This is very important to understand that you have two conscious as well as unconscious mind. And I will go into detail about that, correct? So you have high or low self-esteem from psychology, correct? Same concept is there in Islamic that you have high and low self-esteem, but the concepts are different. It's a self-evaluation to which an individual has faith and accept to follow. So we are talking about faith and to follow in Islamic concept. That's self-esteem. It also comes from conscious and unconscious mind. So you see the difference in the concept. From the Islamic concept is your faith and how much you are following it. From the psychology and psychiatry concept is your individual values and how much you self believe in it. And the values are more pretty much materialistic values of fame values, things like that, right? So you have a different concepts completely. Now let's go to the next slide. So I'm putting both the concept together and making you aware of it. So when you put both the concept together, you will see the difference. From the psychology is the value in the world comes, correct? From the Islamic concept is the faith and how much you follow your faith. That's the difference. So when you put into your mind and thought process goes, you think about it and what are your goals. So in the psychology and psychiatry, your goals are limited. In Islamic concept is unlimited. Now, why I say limited in psychology versus unlimited Islamic concept? Because the psychology concept remains in this world, correct? It does not goes beyond this world, so it's limited. Islamic concept is not only in this world, but the next world, right? So it's unlimited. So see the difference? Whatever you put in, you get the goals, but we know the pathways in the brain from psychology and psychiatry. That's why we use the psychiatry and psychology to understand how our behavior works, correct? If you're looking for fame, value, money, this is how much you will get. If you're looking for faith, this is how you're going to get. So psychology does helps you, but we are trying to learn more about, because Quran is the ideal source, is the golden concept, correct? But Quran also tells what the outcome is, correct? So when you know what is the source and what the outcome, you want to know how it happens. Psychology at times can help you. So if it does helps you, try to figure out why it's reached this goal. And that's why I use psychology a lot of time to try to understand from the Quranic concept why this goal is coming. And once you understand neurology and psychiatry and psychology, you totally get the point. Why Allah wants, why the reason was given that this was, and why your results came this, because it makes sense to me. So that's why I use this thing. So let's go to the next slide. So I mentioned to you about conscious and unconscious mind. Everybody has conscious and unconscious mind. Keep this thing in mind, correct? This is not a new concept. It's going on from Aristotle and Socrates going on. In the last 100 years, you have big psychiatrists came like Carl Jung, Sigmund Freud, and all other came, and they went into minor detail to figure out what is conscious mind and what is unconscious mind. And what they have figured out, that the conscious mind only contribute to 20 to 30% of your thinking process. It is the unconscious mind that feeds into your conscious mind and then you present. So there is a huge component of unconscious mind contributing to your conscious mind. The problem with us is what happened is that we are fixing the conscious mind, not realizing what is in our unconscious mind sitting. Unconscious mind is not directly connected. Conscious mind is through the subconscious mind, but it gives all the feedback to conscious mind. You're not aware of it, right? So in psychiatry, we go into unconscious mind to figure out what's going on. And same thing with our faith, same thing with our self-esteem and all those things. So there is a significant portion sitting in the unconscious mind which we don't tap into it. And the goal of us is to figure out what is sitting in our unconscious mind. They're creating a low self-esteem. We already know we have low self-esteem in conscious mind, but we do try to figure out what is unconscious mind contributing to low self-esteem, correct? So that is very important to understand. Okay, let's go to the next slide. This is what Sigmund Freud explained, structural theory, correct? So Sigmund Freud, this is what he said, that it's like a tip of an iceberg. You know, the only 20-30% which is top of floating above the sea level is your conscious mind, and rest is unconscious mind. And he divided into id, ego, and superego, which I will go into ego conflict and all those things. These are the things which is you keep in mind, that id, which is similar to nafs, which Islamic concept of nafs is at unconscious level, correct? And then there's a fight going on between id and superego, and the id has to resolve it and go from there. I will go into detail about that, but this is the concept everybody knows in Sigmund Freud, and we work on this concept so you understand why conscious and unconscious mind is so important for all of us. Let's go to the next slide. This is the study from Amsterdam Symposium came in 2000, and it shows you how much contribution your conscious and unconscious mind is doing it. And you can see the sadness, happiness, anger, and fear. The shaded portion shows that's unconscious mind contributing, and the less shaded one are the conscious mind. So you can see there is a significant amount of information from the unconscious mind going to your conscious mind. So we have to rectify the issues of your unconscious mind to fix the issue of if we have low self-esteem, right? And this is one slide really explained very well on that. Let's go to the next slide. So let's look at the anatomy of a human body, you know, the brain, and see where the conscious and unconscious mind is. The forebrain, which is the front of your brain, is your conscious mind. This is the area you make executive decision, judgment, critical decision making, where you do sijda. You know, that area, just the front area of the brain, that is a very critical area of your brain where logical thinking taking place, correct? So that is considered one of the core feature of a conscious mind, is where the executive decision taking place. Rest of the brain, which is like, you know, you have amygdala, which is the emotional center. You have hypothalamus, which is a regulatory center throughout your body. Then you have thalamus, basal ganglia, hippocampus, brainstem. These are, so all of them are at the unconscious level, and these give feedback to your conscious mind, correct? But conscious mind is always active. Even when you're sleeping, it's active. So, like if you heard about people doing sleepwalking, correct? Is the unconscious mind working? So people write things while during the sleepwalking and sleep talking and all those things. So your unconscious mind is very important. While you're sleeping, you're breathing, and all those things taking place. Your heartbeat is regulating and all those things. These are coming from your unconscious mind. That those areas are controlling it. So it's very important to understand this concept that you have unconscious mind significantly giving input to your rest of the body, and you have to analyze and go from there. Okay, so at least you know the location, as well as there's another definition of what they call conscious mind is the connection of the prefrontal cortex to rest of the body. If you are connected well, this become conscious mind, but it's usually the frontal area of the brain. The prefrontal cortex is where the conscious mind lies. Let's go to the next slide. So this is just a scale to assess your self-esteem by Rosenberg self-esteem scale. Just to have idea, these are the question to do. People do it to assess the self-esteem. I just gave you an example of it, so at least you have idea about that. Okay, let's go to the next slide. This is a MRI, function magnetic resolution. Then, when you are actively thinking, your brain activities goes really more pronounced in the prefrontal cortex, and it's all lit up. So, showing that you're thinking at the time. So, this is where the conscious process taking place, just showing from the MRI. Okay, just to make you sure that this is what happens in your brain. Go to the next slide. So let's come to the concept of low self-esteem. So in low self-esteem, you have lack of identifying positive things about self, lack of any goal or for life, fear of rejection of other, take blame easily, unimportant feeling. These are usually the feeling of low self-esteem is, correct? Let's go to the next slide. Good. So I will go into the definition before I will fix the issue about how we're going to resolve self-esteem, because we have to correct our concepts first, correct? So if you understand, self-esteem can be high or low, correct? These are the thing. It cannot be neutral self-esteem. That's the way it is. Self-appraisal is different thing. Self-appraisal is a neutral value. You know, when you buy a house, it's appraised. That's self-appraisal, correct? Appraisal of the house. So see, same thing. But self-esteem is always high or low. It cannot be neutral. Now, the next concept is self concept. That is significantly important to understand self esteem. The concept of oneself as a complete description, your identity. Your self concept is your identity, your core identity. Are you Muslim? Are you, what are you? Correct? This is a concept you already have since you're born or you're developing it. These are the self concept where you rely on. This is very important for self esteem. What is your self concept? Now, the next one is self confidence. Self confidence is a specific ability and competency. So, you have specific ability to speak about something, correct? That's self confidence. That is totally different than self esteem is. Self esteem focus on overall your belief and how much you follow or overall worth and self acceptance. So people can have high self confidence, but they may have low self esteem because they're very good in speaking, correct? So they can talk about something which they're good in it and they can talk very nicely. But when you switch the topic, they lose the self confidence. But the people who with self esteem is different. It's overall values and what you believe in it. So if you have a high self-esteem, you will most likely will have high self-confidence in yourself because your self-esteem is low, high. So self-esteem really depict your self-confidence, correct? So these are two different concepts. Self-confidence is just the expression of what you know at that time and what you're talking. But self-esteem is overall worth or overall your faith, which you're following and accepting it. So it's two different concepts. Don't mix up self confidence with self esteem. Next slide. Now, this is very important to understand. These are higher definition you need to understand. So, inflated self-esteem, people in psychiatry know about it. People in different fields give different names, but you need to know what is psychiatry and psychology uh, pronounce or tell the names for each self-esteem. So, inflated self-esteem coming from your conscious mind, you have arrogance, you have external validation, denial of failure, you're very fragile, unstable, and actually you have very low self-esteem. So this is very important to understand. It's coming from your conscious mind and you have arrogance, external validation. In fact, inflated self-esteem is present in people with narcissism. So they look like they have high self-esteem, but actually they have inflated self-esteem. And you have to keep in mind, they have arrogance. They don't have empathy. That is very important to understand. They have arrogance. They work on arrogance, external validation they're on, and denial of failure. So they're very fragile and they look like they have high self. Actually, they have very low self-esteem. Actually, they have inflated self-esteem. Now, implicit egotism is another definition you need to understand. Is coming from unconscious mind. So inflated self-esteem comes from conscious mind. implicit egotism coming from unconscious mind. It's a positive bias, like when your name is called or letter is used, you feel proud. So that is a human tendency that if your name is called in a good way, you feel better, correct? As long as you have empathy, you have high self-esteem. If you have arrogance, you're going towards narcissism. Very important to understand what is associated with that. Are you associated with empathy or arrogance? With implicit egotism. Okay. So what is high self-esteem? High self-esteem comes from your conscious mind as well as unconscious mind. It has empathy, it has internal validation, it has tolerance, it has stability and resilience. This is high self-esteem, correct? So you have to keep this thing in mind that these are the concept of high self-esteem, which is there to improve your high self-esteem. So we have to develop that. Let's go to the next slide. So let me start applying on this concept. So you have a self concept, which is your self identity, then self verification. So for instance, you pray namaz or you are doing that. You're doing self verification. Is it worth to pray namaz? Am I doing or I'm interested to pray namaz? What is the importance of namaz? Because you will question yourself. So you verify your own self concept, correct? And verification come from yourself or from somebody else can ask you the same question. Why are you spending so much time on namaz, correct? Or any good thing or which is the Islamic concept is, correct? So you verify by yourself or somebody else. If you have a core concept or identity really clear and established and you're following, your self verification goes and it will not hurt you. You will feel proud. So you will have high self esteem. Remember, you have to have empathy in it. If you have arrogance in your self concept, then you're going towards narcissism because you will start developing implicit egotism, which I said, where your name comes in, you feel very proud and you have arrogance in it. That leads to self serving bias that everything belongs to me. And then you go into full narcissism. So in narcissism, they look like they have high self esteem, but actually they have not high self esteem. They have inflated self esteem. Okay, so very important to understand that they have to have empathy to have high self-esteem. If you have arrogance, it's going towards narcissism. Okay, empathy is able, and what is empathy? Is the ability to recognize and share the positive emotional response. That's what empathy is. Let's go to the next slide. So what these are very important concepts from Islamic concept. So you need to understand the difference between sympathy, empathy, and compassion. Correct? People mix it up. So sympathy is sharing the positive emotional response of a person. It's just sharing. Empathy is ability to recognize and share the positive emotional response. It's much higher than sympathy, empathy. And compassion is the highest level. With empathy, with the desire to alleviate the suffering. Islam all talk about compassion and empathy, correct? So in self-esteem, you have to have empathy and compassion. You cannot have arrogance. Then it does not work for you. So these are the different definition you need to understand. Let's go to the next slide. This is the way I see you can understand the concept by diagram. So you have a self concept or identity of your own self, correct? You may have identity of your country, you may have identity of your religion, you can have that's your identity, it's your self concept. Then there's a self verification take place by you question yourself or somebody question yourself. Are you feeling proud of it or not, correct? From what you're doing and you're following the faith or not, correct? That develops self-esteem. So this is how the core value of self-esteem is. So if you are proud what you follow and you believe in it, your self-esteem goes up. If you have arrogance, then you'd start going into narcissism. You will start developing implicit egotism, self-serving bias, and ultimately narcissism, correct? So you need to understand it looks similar, but how the arrogance take you to narcissism and how empathy and compassion take you to high self-esteem. Very important to understand. Let's go to the next slide. How to fix the issue? Somebody has low self esteem. These are the things you need to understand very well to fix your if you have low self-esteem. And if you are improving your self-esteem, these are the concepts you need to put in mind, that how I can get my self-esteem much higher, you know. So identifying your core belief, your identity is very important for you to develop self-esteem, higher self-esteem. Because if you develop your identity, your conscious and unconscious mind will come back to you and haunt you. Why are you doing that? You know, we are not getting out of it anything. So your conscious and unconscious mind is always fighting and throwing you that it does not jive with the world or your values or concepts, correct? So you have to understand and go into your unconscious mind to fix it. So you have to develop core belief really well. Do you have the Islamic core belief or not? Do you have the value system of this world or not? Because if you have a value system, then you're following the psychology concept. If you're following the Islamic system, it's the faith and where do you follow or not, correct? Look at, I can give you example of Abu Zar Ghafari. He didn't had any money, you know, but his self-esteem was very high. So he's following the Islamic concept, right? Look at Huzur Sassan. Look at Sahaba. Huzur Sassan used to eat after 3 days. You know, he used to lie down and then he has a marking on the back, and Hazrat Umar used to cry about it. And he used to say that the Roman Empire lives lavishly, and here my prophet, the best of the best prophet, how they are going through. And so this is what the concept is. And you know that they care about the faith and how do you follow it. They don't care about the value system, correct? Yes, you need to take care of it. That is essential. They also take care of it. But how much do you take care of it? And what is the core values you have, core belief you have, correct? Core belief value does tells you to take care of yourself, take care of yourself, your spouse, your family members, and all those things. But then there is limitation of how far you can go, right? And that's where it comes with it. From the Islamic faith, it tells you very well, and that's where the self-esteem comes in. So these are conscious and unconscious mind comes back and haunt you and say, hey, you can do more, you can get more and more, and then you sidetrack on values, money or prestige, and all those things. Then you're following the psychology concept of self-esteem, correct? So very important to understand the identity concept of your core belief. And the other thing which you have to understand is trust. Do you trust what you believe? If you don't trust, it's not worth it. Means find a currency which has no value, no trust. What's the value then? You know, if you follow Islamic concept, but people look at you and say, actually don't believe in it, correct? So there's no trust in it. If you don't have, you're fooling yourself, correct? And fooling the world that I'm this. So you need to develop trust in you because there is an issue coming in your body. I'm going to tell you about that. Okay. So you have to believe in your trust. And if you have a trust and identity, core belief is correct, it will help your self-esteem right away. Correct. The other thing which has to be kept in mind is your automatic thoughts and alternate thoughts. Very important to understand. So let's go into this concept, which is next one. Next slide. So this is how it happens. You have low self-esteem. Anything bad happens, you have automatic thoughts. Right away, thoughts comes into your mind. You know, your mind thinks about it. You have a supporting evidence for it and supporting evidence against it. And so this is in your nature, in your body, in your brain, that any bad thing happens, you decide on the spot. And then you have alternate or balancing thought. This is coming from psychiatry. Okay. So I'm giving you how it will help your self esteem. Correct. So let's go to the next slide, which will go into minor detail about it. This is your brain, which as I went before about anatomy, now I'm going to see how it applies on you, correct? So anything you see or hear that is uncomfortable or you didn't like it, the information goes from your eyes to your thalamus area, correct? In the middle of the brain, where is the thalamus, is the receiving area, correct? From that area, there's a short loop pathway that goes to hypothalamus just below the thalamus, correct? And from there it goes to uh, to hypothalamus, a hypothalamic region. From that, it goes to basically you have a fright and flight reaction, immediate reaction from the hypothalamus, and then it goes to brainstem, and you will have reaction right over throughout the body. So something scary things comes in, or you hear a loud sound and you get scared. This is how your automatic reflex come. This is called automatic thoughts, correct? Right away, you don't have to think, you respond right away. Some car coming really fast and you want to protect yourself, you don't think, you just move, correct? You make decision. This is system in your body to protect you. This is automatic thoughts, correct? On the spot. At the same time, your body has long pathway. The long pathway go to the frontal area of the brain. What we say prefrontal cortex, that's the area it goes, where the critical decision thinking take place. Your logical thinking, analysis take place, correct? And then it's sent back to again the hypothalamus, and there it analyze and it say, slow down. It's not worth it, or it evaluate the situation and say, you need to take appropriate, you don't need to respond this way, you need to calm down. And then the response goes lesser, amygdala slows down, the response go to the brainstem, and you slow down. So this is alternate pathway or balancing pathway. So these are the system already placed in your brain. This from behavior science and neurology I'm talking about. Very important concept to understand in self-esteem, that what is activating and what are you using, correct? So these are the concepts. Now let's go to the next slide and I will go and explain to you. This is what you need to understand. So when you see something which is you don't like it, or something that really offends you, it goes to your limbic area and you respond right away. You get angry, upset, and all those things, correct? That's a limbic area. The hypothalamus, actually the amygdala and all those things center activates and it sends to you throughout your body the reaction. Okay, that's a short loop. Then the long loop, which I talk about, which goes to prefrontal cortex, where the thinking, executive decision taking place happens. Okay, and then the thought comes back and you respond. So it's very important to understand your alternate or balancing thought. Give time, think about it rather than react, correct? It will give you a better output, correct? So when you start thinking, logically thinking, you are better off than when you don't logically think and respond right up, correct? So it's important in self-esteem to use your logical thinking in alternate pathway. That will help you, but not necessary it will help all the time, correct? There are people who use their logical thinking but still have problems. So, what are those problems? And actually, the problem lies in your biases, fallacies, cognitive dissonance, and ego conflicts. These are sitting in there in your conscious as well as unconscious mind. When I say unconscious mind, it's coming 60 to 80% coming from there, which you have not tapped into it, correct? So you need to fix your biases, fallacies, cognitive dissonance, and ego conflict, correct? When you do that, it will help your alternate thoughts, the executive decision making, because these biases will not affect your alternate thoughts. It will be clear cut because there's no biases now. The IMS went into minor detail on biases and fallacies. Let's go to the next slide, which goes through briefly. So these are the biases and fallacies. So biases are system way of approaching, but then you go towards your way of thinking. You find this reason, basically the kind of shortcut method that this looks better, so I will do that. So these are biases like halo effect, horn effect, Dunning Kruger effect. I think so. IMS went into minor detail about that. Correct. If you have those biases sitting there, which there are more than 50 to 100 biases. You need to identify the definition of biases and then look into yourself. Which biases do you have? If you have it, you need to correct it because you're going to correct at your unconscious level as well as conscious level. When you correct that, that will help your critical decision making, correct? So it's your job to figure out which biases you have And these biases are done very well in IMS. So I can go later on, but right now, with the restriction of time, I cannot go each one of them, correct? Let's go to the next slide, which are fallacies. So next slide is fallacy. So it's error in reasoning, correct? Appeal to nature, black and white thinking, ad hominem thinking, correct? Genetic fallacy, slippery slope fallacy. These are fallacies sitting in your unconscious mind. You don't realize it, but it's there. So you have to find which fallacies you have it, because when you clarify these fallacies, it will help your critical decision making. It will help your self-esteem right away. But then you will have the real correct concept of your self-esteem, that I follow Islam and why I follow Islam, correct? This is very important to understand to correct your fallacies and biases. Let's go to the next slide. The third one is more important also, cognitive dissonance. People have, every one of us has some cognitive dissonance. So, what is cognitive dissonance? Cognitive dissonance was discovered maybe around 50 or 80 years ago by a psychologist. What he said that your education, your belief, and behavior has to be in the same paradigm. So, if your education is, like, for instance, you believe in Islam, but you don't believe it, your behavior is not going with the Islamic concept, you have cognitive dissonance, correct? It has to go, all the three paradigm has to be on the same parallel pathway. It cannot go differently, because the body will recognize you're not doing it. People will develop anxiety, depression, and other features if you have cognitive dissonance. People will develop low self esteem when they have cognitive dissonance. Very important to understand, you have to rectify. If you say, I do this, you need to believe in it and you have to do it, because the body will say that, hey, you are fooling yourself. You may fool the other world, but you are fooling internally and you develop cognitive dissonance. Very important to understand, if you don't have cognitive dissonance, it will help your self-esteem significantly and you go higher to in self-esteem. Okay. The next concept, let's go to the next slide. This is something you need to understand from Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud said that in a conscious and unconscious mind, you have id, ego, and superego, which I went small. I didn't went into detail. So it developed when you are born. Just remember, it is your nafs, right? Just keep this thing in mind. Islamic concept of it is nafs, correct? Ego developed a few months later, and then ego and it works together when you're growing up, and the superego develop at the age of 6. These are the time period when they develop in your mind in psychology function of it. The Islamic concept is nafs, qalb, and ruh concept, correct? Very important to understand. Psychology goes in it, but of course, psychology is much inferior than Islamic concept. But you learn the concept, and when you apply on nafs, qalb, and ruh, you totally understand what Allah is trying to say to you. And what's the correlation with that, correct? Psychology does helps very much to understand that. Okay, let's go to the next slide. You have to go further, yes. Keep on going for next slide, yes. So these are the actually definition of id. It is a unconscious. It is always unconscious, as is a reservoir of libido. Libido is the basic energy fueling your human thought and behavior. That's the definition of psychology. It's non-rational, immediate gratification and pleasure. This is your nafs, correct? That is your drive to do it, correct? So then the id always fight with the superego according to psychology, correct? The superego is what? Mostly unconscious, entirely not rational, but rigid to the moral ideals, internalized moral standard from parents and society, and presses for his goal as blindly as it is. So always superego always fight with id, and the ego has to resolve this issue. If ego is rational, conscious as well as unconscious, and it does not, it has delay gratification. It cannot give immediate gratification. So when there's a fight between it and superego, and ego has to resolve it, if it cannot resolve the issue, then you develop what we call defense mechanism. You develop anxiety. The anxiety comes because the id and superego fights and ego cannot resolve it, correct? So this is very important concept. You have to understand that this happens. Same thing happens in low self-esteem also. When the id and the superego, nafs and ruh fights, The qalb has to figure out the concept. And if the qalb cannot resolve it, Quran talks in much detail about the qalb issues, correct? That they are black, they cannot understand it because the qalb is the one who decides it, what to do. And if it cannot dissolve, then you develop low self-esteem and all those things, correct? So you keep this thing in mind. Let's go to the next slide. So these are the concept of defense mechanism. When you are it in superego fights, you can have altruism. Altruism is just the opposite of narcissism. Keep this thing in mind. Gratification without return from other, altruism. So Islamic concept is altruism, correct? Keep this thing. This is healthy defense mechanism. Humor is a healthy defense mechanism. So these are the if the ego is strong and able to handle with high self-esteem, they will have healthy defense mechanism. If they are unable to resolve the conflict between id and superego, nafs and ruh, they will have other issues coming up, and the psychiatry goes in detail what type of defense mechanism they develop. They may have denial, they may have reaction formation, they have projection, displacement, and all those things. Just to calm down yourself, you have to develop, and they develop low self-esteem. So these are the definitions. There are more than 100 defense mechanisms, but just few of them I just put it. Do you understand when there's a conflict, these are the defense mechanism people develop. So you have to have healthy defense mechanisms to do that. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so basically now understand why we need to let me go back to the other slide, which I have to explain more detail. Let's see which slide I need to go. Okay, slide number 18, if you can come. Yes. So we talk about alternate thoughts and automatic thoughts, so you have to resolve those issues. Then identify your negative self-talk. Very important. So if you have negative self-talk, you have to rectify that, why you're having it, correct? Secondary gain, very important to understand, is coming from your unconscious mind. So what is secondary gain? If you are in pain and other people are taking care of it, you want to stay in pain because your unconscious mind says, well, it's much easier because I'm in pain or I am going through this guilt trip and all those things. I don't need to deal with it. The world is helping me. This is your unconscious mind keeping you that. So in higher self-esteem, people get out of this secondary gain and work on this issue. So you need to understand, if do you have a secondary gain remaining in low self-esteem, and if you do, get it out. Then it will help your high self-esteem. Fear of rejection is very important. Accomplishment to improve your self-esteem, very important to you for you. And always try to rule out medical and psychiatry issue when you have some problems, because it may affects your self-esteem. So if you have psychiatry disorders or medical disorder which has psych component in it, you need to rectify that, correct? Because that can be help you to achieve it. Increase eye contact and proper demeanor. You always have to keep healthy boundaries and develop resilience, correct? If you have high self-esteem, you will develop high resilience. So the question I will ask you, and this is where you need to think about it, that Abu Jahl was during Huzzur's time, correct? Abu Jahl was during the golden period of Islam, correct? But he didn't accept Islam. In fact, he was totally against it. So he was using his frontal lobe and think about it, correct? But still he was wrong, correct? We see this thing all the time other people have. Means they use their frontal lobe, but they're still behind. So, what is the biggest issue? The biggest issue with why they have low self esteem is basically their core concept is poor, or they have biases, fallacies, cognitive dissonance, and ego conflicts. Abu Jahl had all of these. So, psychiatry helps you in this way that when you work on those issues, it will bring you out from low self-esteem to high self-esteem. And everybody has different issues. Means I cannot say my issues are same than other people's. No, I have to look into myself and look into my unconscious mind to figure out all these issues, and that will help my high self-esteem. So psychiatry really definitely help us. But then we have to do our due diligence to figure out this issue, right? Now, that was the other example I can give you, which is very simple, is our prayers. Our prayers and our moment prayers are totally different. You know, so the question comes, why? You know, Women have high self-esteem, correct? So their prayers are better. Allah never stop us to do a moment prayer. Means every 5 times a day, correct? Allah never stops us. So it's us who are stopping. So if we develop high self-esteem, our prayer will be much better. We will pray very close to moment, correct, or similar to that. That will be much helpful for us. So it's very significantly important to develop self-esteem. It's a process. It's not going to develop in one day, but when you start thinking correctly with the correct concepts, then work on it, your self esteem will get better. That's my way of looking at it. Thank you very much for coming. And if you have any questions, I'm here to answer those ones.
Thank you so much, Dr. Najib. That was a very informative session. So approximately how much time do you have to take the questions? Because Hassan Khilji
I
told
have
us.
half an hour. Definitely, I have half an hour.
Okay, okay, that's good enough. So anybody from the audience that want to ask the question, please go ahead. So raise your hand if you have a question. Up until then, I have so many questions. Can I ask until somebody else raise their hands?
Sure, go ahead.
Um, Hamza, can you go to the slide where there was a mention of goals and then Islamic self-esteem and like self-esteem from the point of view of psychology?
That's the beginning slide.
Yep. Dr. Najeeb, keep an eye on the chat because people might be posting questions over there.
Yeah, Rubina has hand up. She's
Yeah.
asking unconscious mind same as subconscious mind. Okay. No, unconscious is connected by subconscious to conscious mind. So you have conscious mind and unconscious mind. It is connected by subconscious mind. That's a good question. Yes. What's the question on that?
Um, uh, so that diagram, the iceberg, you've got conscious mind and unconscious. So is it information that's stored in the subconscious? Most of the what is the emotions stored? What is lying in the subconscious mind?
Okay. So we are talking about unconscious mind, not subconscious mind. Some
Both,
people
both,
do
because
mix up that. Subconscious is a very small connection from the unconscious mind to the conscious mind from psychology point of view, correct? I'm just very very frank on that. Okay. Now
mm,
the Islamic concept does not talk about subconscious mind, correct? So let's
mm,
be very clear about it. So what are your sources? Psychology, this is what it is, correct? So what is in unconscious mind? That's your
yes,
question.
yes.
So, as I mentioned in the diagram, the whole structure of the brain, except the frontal area, is your unconscious mind. You're not
Mm,
aware of it.
okay.
Unconscious is you're not aware of it. It's sitting there, correct?
Mm-hmm,
Information or knowledge sitting there. There's a difference between information and knowledge. Information is anything that comes to your mind. Knowledge is verified and all those things. Knowledge is something much higher than information is, correct? So the body takes all the information, process and make a knowledgeable decision that this is what it is stored in the memory system and all those things throughout your brain, correct?
mm-hmm,
That is unconscious. As long as you're not aware, it is unconscious mind.
mm-hmm.
Do you understand? You can see in the diagram of which I'm going to show you, um, where the brain structure is after this. Yes. So if you see over here, The prefrontal cortex of forebrain is your conscious mind, where your executive decision making place. Now you see on the backside where you have basal ganglia, thalamus, hippocampus, hypothalamus, amygdala. These are all unconscious mind.
Mm-hmm.
They're always
Okay.
working for you.
Mm-hmm.
Means the whole system is working for you, correct? Like sleepwalking, correct? How
Mm-hmm.
which system of your brain is working? Your unconscious mind. You're asleep, but you still walk. People have written paragraphs. People have driven cars in unconscious mind by sleepwalking and all those things. Correct? So your brain is always active. If it's not active, you will stop breathing.
Yeah.
Correct? When you're sleeping, somebody has to keep it active. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
It's your unconscious mind is doing it. Same as memory system. If you understand in geriatric psychiatry, the most important part is sleep to avoid memory loss. Because during the sleep, you take away all the derbis and all the collection of information which is not required during the sleep. And through
Mm-hmm.
endo G lymphatic system is taken out. So you don't develop plaques and all those things, correct? In Alzheimer's disease, you develop those things, correct? So these are the things very important for you to understand that unconscious mind is always active. And that is very important. And you have
Mm-hmm.
to rectify your unconscious mind. What we do is we correct our conscious mind, not fix on our unconscious mind. Now, knowing that 60 to 80% information is coming from unconscious mind, you have left the 60 to 80% to be fixed. So you're just fixing the 20% of your conscious mind. So start working on unconscious mind and fix the problem, which I mentioned to you: biases, fallacy, cognitive dissonance, ego conflicts, correct? Example of Abu Jahl, correct? Means he was living in the golden time. Why he cannot get it? Means he was one of the family members, far away family members of Uzusam. He loves.
Very arrogant and very probably was a narcissist of his time.
That is one. That is only one factor, but he has more than one. That's why I'm bringing psychiatry and psychology here. When you say arrogance, it's coming into the ego conflict, correct?
Mm-hmm.
But didn't he had biases? Definitely he has biases. Didn't he have fallacies? Yes, he has fallacies. Did he
Mm-hmm.
have cognitive dissonance? He did. So the point of saying is just not one, he had multiple. The problem is, do we have similar thoughts just like Abu Jahl is? Because we don't want to follow him. Because one thing we don't want to do is be 1% of Abu Jahl. If you are 0.1% of Abu Jahl, think about it. Allah will be close to you or away from you on the day
Away.
of judgment.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to understand what is Abu Jahl is. If we understand the whole detail about Abu Jahl, we can prevent ourselves. But just knowing one factor, you are just throwing like, you know, throwing a person, it's impossible to learn everything if you have one variable. If you have a dot in a whole screen, you don't know which direction to go. You need more and more information, correct? So we need to learn about Abu Jahl so then we can stay away from his character. And the more we stay away from his character, we will have high self-esteem.
Or on the contrary, if we are more closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that would clear our subconscious, the debris, just that faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and what we feel when we're connected. Does that help to clear any debris within the subconscious?
Correct. But do you know, and let me ask you a quiet question on that. How many moments do you know in your community or surrounding,
How many moments?
Yes.
I don't
And
understand.
this, you don't need to answer it, correct? And this is a difficult question. But we know all the politicians. We know all the wealthy people, what their
Hmm.
lifestyle is, correct?
Yeah.
Where are we going? We are preaching the politician and the wealthy people, or we are following the moments? If you follow the moments, it will pull you out from where you
Mhm.
are. Because the
That's right.
moment
Yeah.
are closest to the Quran and Sunnah, Sirat, correct? They are live example.
No,
So
that
you
is
have the book of Hikmat, Quran, the Sirah, and you look for the moments.
Well, so does it work the other way that you're connected, you'll meet a Mu'min, and they will then open the path towards Quran and the Sirah and everything
So,
religious?
yeah, so you have a live example of somebody who's a moment, correct? In front
Yeah,
of you.
yeah,
Then you have to do due diligence that you need to follow the Quran and the
yeah.
Sirah.
That is
If
my
you follow,
personal experience, that it was a connection with a Mu'min, and I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about Islam and how it helps you in your life here and the hereafter, spiritually, physically, that was all just superficial. But
okay,
once we entered into the halaqah and a tafsir class and we listened and things started to make sense, fall into perspective, it was just like being drawn in. You just wanted more and more of it.
yes, it does. I give you example. Like recently, like a year ago, there was a one person who converted into Islam, correct?
Mhm,
And then he converted Islam. But then, just before the Ramzan and during the Ramzan, he was the first one to be on the prayers, the first uh, in the first row. He was the one, all the five prayers and everything. At the end of the Ramadan, there was another guy who came and in front of me. I didn't know either one of them. He said, Do you know, you just converted into Islam almost a month ago, but
mhm,
your faith is better than mine. I'm more than
mhm,
50 years old, but your faith is better than mine. I want to know how you got that faith. And in my mind, it really hit me. The other guy may be 50, 60 years old, may have read Quran 100 or 1,000 times. And this guy who just converted to Islam may have not read the Quran one time.
mhm.
How come he had a better faith than him? That's the question you need to ask, correct?
Yeah, yeah,
So that's something Allah wants you to know. He has not even read the whole Quran and he has a better faith. And the guy who has read 100 times Quran, learning from him that how did you got the faith? He has not even read the Hikmat, book of Hikmat. Do you know the answer for that?
no.
I just showed you. Because he has no biases, he has cleared the biases, he has cleared the
Mm.
fallacies, he has cognitive dissonance, ego conflict, he's cleared.
It's like a clean page.
Clean page. So he has just the conscious mind is one direction. This is the book of Allah. This is the Holy Quran. This is first and the last, and I have to follow it. I have no guilt feeling. My
Yeah.
life belongs to it. So do you understand? The unconscious mind keeps on bothering you.
Yes.
But his unconscious was so clear, just like Sahabas. That's why I gave you example of moment. Find a moment.
Mm.
That will really guide you because if you have see a moment how they do, then you look back into your holy book, learn and see from them. It's a practical example. How come they're doing it? Means every time, 5 times a day, Allah expect you to pray, correct? But we do a Muslim prayer. And you can ask how the moment prayers are, correct? Much better. Allah never stop you to read like a moment, but we
Mm.
don't. Allah wants you to come up with a better prayers. So if you have high self-esteem, you will go to that level. Just look just more into Abu Jahl. The more you learn, the more you run away from his characters, correct? The more you run away from his character, the better you are.
Jazakallah.
Does it make sense to you?
Yes. Yeah. Jazakallah khair.
But brother, as you're mentioning that we should look for moments around us and then um, try to achieve what they have achieved. But then if we're making role models in the moments around us, there can be another bias, which can be like halo effect. And then nobody is perfect on earth at the moment. And actually, we do not know who is a moment and who is not.
So that's why we have to find the correct moment, which is difficult, correct? But there will be a guidance that they're at a higher level, correct? We
Yeah.
need to have a practical example around you, which are better person. Your imam is not the best of the best, but we follow the imam, correct?
Once
So
we know the attributes that Allah wants us to have, we can find personifications of those attributes in different people and then try to adopt them.
the goal it has to be you need to do your work.
Mm,
You need to read Quran, Sirah
yeah.
very well and adapt to it, correct?
Mm,
And if you want to see further, look into the moment, how they're doing it. If they're not doing it, leave them alone,
yep.
correct? Your goal is your Quran and the Sirah. But you want to see practical. It's a human nature to see somebody who is following it or not. We always follow somebody else, a politician and all those things, correct? To follow them, correct? It's a human nature to look into a real life person, correct? But you don't need to follow them. But at least it give you idea of how they are better off than I am, correct? Yes, they will have biases and fallacies. Totally, you're right. But you do your job. First, you correct yourself. Allah does not ask you to not to correct yourself. But you're just looking at the live examples, correct? We
Mm,
don't have live example, correct? Huzur is not here. Sahabas are not here, correct? The only thing which is the best of the best is the Quran and the Sirah, correct?
yep. Mm,
And we have this for how many years?
mm.
Are we better off?
The problem
So,
was, yeah, the problem was we were looking at the Quran and Sirah from a biased angle as well.
yes, so I'm trying to explain that fix your core issues.
Mm,
You fix your core issues. Don't follow the moments right away because it's just a practical example of seeing their high level why I cannot compete with them. Correct? You're trying to compete with them. If you are this better, I will be a better moment than you are. Correct? Sahaba used to compete with each other. Correct? You're
yep.
just trying to compete, but your goal, first goal is Quran and Sunnah.
Mm,
Don't look at other people. First, look at yourself and correct yourself.
mm,
That
yep.
is my point. So your point is valid that just don't follow the moment. I get 100% you're right. You need to follow the Quran and the Sirah first and be very thorough about it. And then on the side, you can look at the moments.
Yep. Jazakallah khair. Mr. Farida and Sister Bushra, if you can unmute and ask your questions, please. Sister Farida.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum. My question is a little bit, will drag you away from the topic, but it is related to the brain. And I'm just wondering because this Seher and the black magic is haq, how people's mind being possessed, because I'm just noticing around me the people who have been just made feel like they are sick. Actually they are not sick, because your MD, I'm more encouraged to ask you this question. They are not, all their reports and everything is fine, but they feel they are sick, and because they feel sick they are suffocated, they can't breathe, their heart rate is high, and when they have been checked medically they consider like it's tachycardia or bradycardia or having this, that and the other, but actually they haven't had anything. So which part of the brain, this this is not a very very much encouraged to learn, but I'm just wondering which part of the brain they possess, or they that makes them feel they are sick, and how we can, Islamically, obviously I know many things how to do the ruqya and things like that, but being a MD, I just want to have your input, please.
Sure, it's a very valid question, and let me answer your question. Okay. So let me put it that way. People with memory issue, they develop Alzheimer dementia, which is the most common cause, correct? Then you have Lewy body dementia, you have vascular dementia, you have frontal temporal dementia. There are different type of dementia, correct? In Alzheimer dementia, at a later stage, you will have hallucinations and delusions where you actually sees people, correct? Somebody will say you have a somebody has done magical things on you, correct? You give medicine and they get better. You have bipolar disorder with psychotic features, correct? They hear voices and see things, correct? Bipolar with psychotic disorder, correct? You give antipsychotic medication and they get better. Now, somebody can say they have done a magic on them, correct? You have schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, correct? They come with they can see or hear things and a lot of other factors, features of schizophrenia, correct? In the previous time they used to say that some magic has taken over with you, correct? Now give them a medicine. When they're properly diagnosed and they get medicine, they get better. If you give ECT treatment, in 2 or 3 times the psychotic feature goes away. There's tons of literature written on it. There are thousands of literature done on ECT and MST and all those procedures done, and they come out of those psychotic features after 3 or 4 times, or at least they are much lesser, right? So if it's magic, they should not come out of it, correct? Yes or no?
I have done my learning disability nursing, so I'm very well aware of all schizophrenia and bipolar and all these conditions and whatever you have explained, my brother. I'm talking about the people who haven't had any condition of such type, and they are having this feeling which can be like, I will put in a way, in this way, like with the ruqya or with surat fatiha, they feel better. So
That's good.
yeah,
If it helps them, do it.
yeah,
Nobody's stopping you.
yeah, and hallucinations, even oxygen, when you don't get enough oxygen, even then you hallucinate. I'm very well aware of
Sure.
medical terminology, but my biggest inquest is where they get this, subhanallah, this possessed in their brain or mind, these whatever it is, which is barhak, obviously we know
So
from.
dopamine pathway. So you
Mhm.
have excessive dopamine. When we do medication treatment for dopamine blockers, there are 5 pathways of dopamine which start from VT and those areas. It goes in the
Mhm.
frontal area, mesotemporal area, all those. They have excess amount or they're
Mhm.
hypersensitivity, and that causes hearing or seeing things. Correct. So these are dopamine pathways. So we give a dopamine blockers to help them.
I see. Okay.
Like Abilify, because we gave it, and different medications are given, correct? To
Mhm.
take away the psychotic feature, as well as ECT is given to take the psychotic feature. Now, the delusions are different and difficult to treat, correct? Delusion is a false belief,
Yeah,
correct? Those
because
are difficult to treat, correct?
yeah,
But the psychotic features of visual and auditory hallucination is much easier to treat, correct? So
definitely.
that's another story.
Yeah. Okay, Jazakallah khairan. I won't drag you
No, that's
more
okay.
because
It's a
people
very
are
good
there.
question.
But this was a big question. Jazakallah khairan. You answered my
So
question.
Bushra, your hand is up. Mr. Bushra.
Yes, Jazakallah khair for giving me the opportunity. I have put my question in writing already, which is um, I may not understand as much the medical terminology, but Alhamdulillah, having understand the purpose of human life and through the Quran and believing in to understand myself, that's my personal my own self, the only guidance which is the guidance is Quran and Hadith. So my understanding in that context is about the nafs. So the nafs, which has got 3 parts, there is nafs amara, which then you would have to work hard going through the second stage, and then the third one is the mutmainna. So that is something which you have to find yourself at which point you feel, mutmain, satisfied. It doesn't disturb you. It doesn't cause any sort of confusion because within you, you start feeling good. So I was wondering what's been explained today. MashaAllah, it's very good. I joined this conversation late, so I may have missed out some of the good learning. But my question was about the, is it this information linked to the same information what is in the Quran? And that is about your nafs.
So the information you are giving is from the Quran. So you have
Yes,
three portion of the nafs, correct?
yes,
Nafs
yes,
amara, nafs
yes.
lawama, and
Lavama.
nafs mutmainna, correct?
Mutmain.
These are
Yes,
three types, correct? So these are
yes.
different stages of your nafs, correct? Or character of the nafs, correct? Uh, Now, Quran also talk about qalb also, correct?
Sorry, talks about
Qalb.
qalb. Yeah, 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 yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Absolutely.
There
Yeah.
is more talk about qalb, and you need to
Uh-huh.
understand why Allah talk about qalb and what it
Mm,
means by that. Correct? Quran
mm.
also talk about ruh also.
Yeah.
Correct? We cannot disassociate those things too, but there's a reason behind that. You need to put all things together. And this is a question somebody asked, and that was similar to that. You said, "I it is nafs." So what is ego and superego? Correct? So psychiatry goes similar pathway, but it helps you to think properly what Allah is trying to tell you. Because you need to understand what is the issue with the qalb. Allah talk about so much about qalb. Why is Allah talking about qalb? That's the question you have to ask. Allah is not going to tell you more. There's no Quran more coming. You need to figure out, right? You may go to the forest like Lukman Hakim and figure out, or you go to university and figure out. But you have to figure out, and Allah will give you hikmat. Correct? Allah also asks you to Rabbi Zidni ilma. Go and search knowledge. Allah is not stopping you. So you need to search knowledge, and Allah will give you hikmat and make you understand why Allah talks about qalb and what is the meaning of qalb. Correct? And same thing goes with ruh concept. Allah has told you about ruh and how much limited information you have about ruh. Correct? This is the question the Jews asked Huzur Sassan. Tell me about ruh. And Allah sent the wahi at the time. This is a limited information given to human being. Correct? So you don't know much about ruh concept. Right? All we know much about that is what is your qalb and what is your nafs. So it's important to understand this concept and understand psychiatry concept. Once you understand psychiatry concept and then look at this nafs, qalb and ruh, it makes so much sense that why Allah was talking. So in my understanding, the qalb, which is the context of the Quran, you need to understand. What exactly qalbs mean? Qalb is a means in the Quran, the exact meaning, which if you look at it, is something which is in the center or something that moves. That's qalb. Now, what people have done is put their biases in it and they put heart. 100 years ago, or more than 100 years ago, that's what they thought about it. Something that is in the center or something that moves. So they put heart. But Allah never said it's hard. Allah said qalb. So let's keep it qalb. Or if you want, keep the exact meaning of the qalb, which is in Arabic means something in the center that moves. So there where the concept comes, so we have to clarify our own concept from the Quran, not to take the biases from other people and accept that. Once we start thinking about heart, then we start thinking about structural heart, actual heart. Then we go farther away from the thinking process because that was not Allah said. Allah said, calm. Let's keep it calm. So I am on the concept of qalb, not putting the meaning behind somebody else who put as heart. If you look at Imam Ghazali, 1,000 years ago, he used the word spiritual heart. He never used the word structural heart. So why we are keeping a structural heart and then start thinking that it's your heart that decides? So you have to keep this thing in mind and understand. So first you have to understand what is nafs, what is qalb, and what is ruh. What are the interaction and what we do, and how our qalb get bogged down by our nafs, because that's what Allah says to you, that the nafs will drive you nuts at time, but you have to control your nafs and enjoy your nafs to mutmain. You are here to enjoy, but you have limitations, correct? Enjoy the nafs till their limitation, and beyond that you should not. And the nafs will push you, correct? And there is a fight between your qalb and actually the fight between your nafs and the ruh, and the qalb has to decide, correct? And there where the problems comes. So you have to control your nafs. Did it make sense to you?
Yeah, what I was saying was that, yeah, the fight is between nafse lawama and first nafse amara. So the heartbeat, I wasn't too clear about this, but as you quite rightly suggested, there is quite a bit complexity in Allah's artistry, the way Allah created us. So there is a lot more to understand yet. And I agree with that, what you said.
Allah is much superior, we cannot catch, but we can only get a fraction of a drop in the
Mm,
ocean. We are much
absolutely.
better off, right? But we are
Absolutely.
trying to get that one drop,
Yeah,
right? And
true.
if we understand that one drop, it will make us a moment,
Mm,
because we
okay.
are on the right pathway. If you
Uh,
don't have a drop, where are you going to go? You have
yeah,
nothing. So you have to
true.
start with the run thing, and it has to start by you. You have to do your job.
Absolutely.
You
Absolutely.
have to fix your problem by reading Quran and Sirah, right? Don't look at other people. But if you want higher guidance, you can go to a moment and look at them and understand better, correct?
Absolutely. And again, each person does self improvement by thinking for themselves or even looking at others. Um, but at the end of the day, react differently. For instance, there is one story about a good person who does all the good things, and his friend asks him, where do you learn? We see you all the time, around here, just doing same what we do. And he said, whenever I see someone doing wrong, I just take that my habit out of me. I just eliminate it. And that's what made me, more maybe refined human being.
MashaAllah, very nicely said. We see, so he has identified wrong things, correct? And he
Yes,
fixed his problem first rather than fixing other people's problem, correct?
absolutely.
Once you
Absolutely.
fix yourself, you are on a higher level. Then you can help other people. But you have to guide other people too. But you have to do your job also.
Your job. Absolutely.
So why
Jazakumullah
we
khair.
help? So my question
Yeah,
is comes for here. Why
yeah,
we fix other people's problem than our? We are more inclined to fix other people than us. Why?
absolutely. Absolutely. Because it is easy to see fault in other people. And to me, the way I see it, you feel terrible when you realize you've done something wrong.
Yes. So
So
you're right.
rather than, yeah,
So you have a guilty feeling when you fix your own issue. So you
Yes,
want to get a reward phenomena by fixing somebody else. You're not
absolutely.
realizing that if you fix your own problem, you will be better off.
That's
Yes, you
true.
can help other people too. That's your job, correct? But the first you have to fix yourself, correct? You
Yeah,
cannot be a drinker and tell other people not to drink.
not to drink. Yeah, absolutely. Jazakumullah khair. I'll give opportunity to someone else, but I'm still listening.
Dr. Najib, if you are saying that Abu Jahl, we have to learn from his character, and initially in the initial slides where you talked about how self-esteem is derived from the goals, so we can have worldly goals and derive our self-esteem once we have achieved our goals or we are in the process of going near to our goals. So regarding that, Abu Jahl would have high self-esteem in his own field according to the goals he has set. He was called as Abul Hakam. He was a wealthy man. He was one of the leaders. So according to the parameters of his surroundings and his culture, he would be a man of high self-esteem because he is entirely in a different game. He was on the religion of his forefathers and all that. Am I understanding it correctly? Whereas a Muslim, he derives his self-esteem from the obedience, from the level of obedience he is doing to the commandments of Allah, because his goal is to be a person who is fulfilling the commandments of Allah. So the more he is fulfilling, the higher his self-esteem would be. Is my understanding correct?
You are on the point. You're 100% correct. And that is a misconcept people have. What they misconcept is, and you're so right about it. So, if you in psychology, what by concept wise is the materialistic value. So, a non Muslim can have a high self esteem. We
Yeah.
cannot say they don't have high self esteem. If somebody is intelligent, just believe them, they are intelligent. If they have a high self esteem based on their concept, you cannot say they don't have it. If they have it, based on what? So you have a guidance criteria. You know how much money you earn and how much you feel proud of it. If that's the criteria and they're getting it and they feel like they're on the top of the world, they have high self esteem for them from their values. We are not contesting them. They can live their life. If they want to drink alcohol and be happy, let them be happy. Not going to say that you are depressed because you're drinking alcohol, so by my law. But if they're saying I'm happy, then be happy.
Mm.
Correct? Don't enforce your concept into them. They are not Muslim. You are a Muslim, stay with your concept. The problem which we have is we mix up both. When we mix up, we don't have Qibla, we don't have directions.
Mm.
Then what we do, we look at the materialistic value. And they say, oh, we have low self esteem. Well, that is a psychology concept, correct? You need to know the concept on what you're standing up. So you're 100% right. They can have high self esteem, we can have high self esteem, but their self esteem is limited. It's going to end when they die. Look at Alexander the Great. Where is self esteem? Look at the Sahabas. Means after they passed away, they have so much respect during their time, and they have respect now, and Allah has respect for them in the next life. How much self esteem you want? See how much unlimited self esteem they have, and how much limited Alexander the Great has. See the difference?
Yeah.
So, Qibla, that's what we say. You need to correct your direction, correct? Direction is only corrected if you know the concept well. The
Mm.
problem with us is we mix the concept and then we are not sure what is happening with us because we didn't correct our concepts. But it's very nicely said. I agree 100% with you.
And in the later slides, like towards the end, you said that the key here, the key to higher self-esteem is to have education, belief, and behavior all aligned together.
Yes.
What is the good tip? And is it our behavior which is an indicator that my subconscious goals are different than my conscious goals.
Okay, so we're talking about cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
Correct. So cognitive dissonance was means more than 50, 70 years old, our psychologists discovered that everybody has cognitive
Yeah.
dissonance. And these are the things you need to understand. Your education, your belief, and behavior has to be together. If you don't, you develop symptoms. Like people develop anxiety disorder. People will have low self-esteem because internally your body knows what you're doing. You cannot lie to yourself, correct? You may lie to the world, but you cannot lie to yourself, right? So you get education, Islamic education, but you drink or do something or lie or whatever you do. Isn't your body knows it? Correct. Does the body knows that this is what you believe or not? Correct. So body knows that you're not believing, you're not following your behavior wise, but your education is this. It does not match. So you have cognitive dissonance. We exactly know with when you have cognitive dissonance, you will have these features. You have low self-esteem. You will have anxiety features because your body will not lie to you.
Maybe
Do you
because,
understand?
yeah, maybe because the education is not translating into belief and the belief is not translating into behavior.
So you get education, but you don't trust it. Look at the example. We read which is the best book in the world is Holy Quran, correct? For
True.
so many years, we have education. I give you the example from the Quran. Chapter number 5, verse 62, Surah Juma. It was directed to Bani Israel. If you look up, I'm paraphrasing it. There was Allah was talking to Bani Israel that you are just since you're not following, you are just like a donkey carrying the book on the back. Don't know what is in it. Aren't we doing the same thing?
Yes, very right. Very right.
And I'm not saying it's Allah is saying. I'm paraphrasing it. This
Hmm.
is the words given. So who Allah is telling to Bani Israel? Actually, Allah is also telling to us too.
Yeah, indeed.
So Allah is telling you if you have the book but don't follow, then Allah tells you you're like a donkey carrying the book.
Hmm.
How much condescending it could be that Allah is telling in your lifetime you're like a donkey.
That's right. And
So
while we
isn't
are,
that
yeah,
go ahead?
while we are receiving these education and making our belief, then the hurdles we face to make the right belief, this is the point where biases and fallacies come and play their action.
Correct. So
Yeah,
your
okay.
intention is very important.
Mm-hmm.
Innamal amalu bin niyat. Do you know that? Your
I think
action
all
is
that
based
niyat
on
are
your
related to biases as well. Oh my God.
yes, but your intention is what is your intention? Are your intention closest to Huzur Sasram or the Quran to achieve it? Or your intention is to enjoy life in this world?
Mm,
Correct? If your
yeah.
intention is closest to Quran and the Sirah, Allah will help you. But if your intention is towards glory, Allah will still help you, give you money because that's what's your intention. You work hard.
Mm. Our intentions are biased and we don't even know
Yes.
that.
So that's why I'm saying everybody has biases.
Mm,
You fix your own biases, fallacies, cognitive lesson, and ego conflict, you are better off.
brilliant. Thank you so much. Brother Najeeb, I'm really worried that you have a prayer ahead.
Sure.
Uh,
So I can take a couple of minutes, 2 or 3 minutes, if anybody else has a question.
does anyone have any other question? Otherwise, I have another question. Sister Misbah or anyone?
Yes, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Walaikum
Mehreen.
salam.
Yeah. I just want to add a little bit points um, after this fruitful discussion and the lecture beautifully you have explained. So I just want to say that all of the discussion I've heard, so I would like to say that actually human beings are complex creation, but a weak, as Quran says, وَخُلِقَ الْإِنسَانَ ضَعِيفًا, Surah Nisa ayah. So what I feel that An arrogant person is apparently hard like stone, but very fragile. When we are talking about self-esteem and related to arrogance, so this is what I feel, that the Quran also talks the qalb, which are hard. An arrogant person, like you have given the example of Abu Jahl, and high self-esteem but arrogant, have a hard heart. What I feel that an arrogant person is apparently hard like stone but fragile, and a humble person seems so delicate apparently, uh, yet soft and strong from inside. As we are saying, we should follow a moment, and a moment always seeks Allah's help through dua, and he or she expresses all their weaknesses in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and gains strength. Uh, this strength we call in our Islamic term a tawakkul on their creator. And this tawakkul giving us a high self-esteem, and many messengers, we have examples and dua in our daily life, azkar. Many Anbiya expresses their weakness by dua in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, rather than if we feel anything, any flaw, any weakness, if we feel that it's in our personality, so we should following the Anbiya, their path, and we first recognize those weaknesses in our personality. This is the point where if we want to get high self-esteem and a confidence in our personality, so we should first look in ourselves, reflect in ourselves, looking at our weaknesses. Like, just I want to give an example of dua of Hazrat Musa alayhi salam. This is very famous dua, the Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa halul uqdatam min lisani. Oh Allah, open my heart, open my chest, and ease my task for me. So these Anbiya's duas from Quran and Hadith, giving us just an insight that how we could improve our weaknesses.
Yeah, but
So,
I will say that one thing. Sorry to interrupt you in the middle. We do dua. Dua is very important, but we have to fix our own issues too. We
yeah.
rely too much on dua and not do our homework. I'll give you example.
Mm,
Jang-e-Uhud. What happened
yes.
here? We did dua. Hudur Sassan was there. Sahabas were there. But we lost the war. Correct?
Yes.
We never give this example. Means how can you lose a war when you have Sahaba and Hudur Sassan and dua is Allah is listening and you will lose the war?
I just,
That's a that's and now let me complete it. That's a learning lesson. Allah will give you when you do everything. Correct? Just dua is not the only thing. Dua is ultimate thing. But you have to do your diligent job. That is very important. So that's the shortcoming of the Muslim is we just look at the dua and look only for dua. Yes, dua is very important. But Allah also wants you to do something for you also. Correct? That is shortcoming. So we don't have knowledge. We talk about Quran without knowledge. So we cannot even talk to a non-Muslim properly. Right? Because they can whip you out with the knowledge portion. We talk about the qalb issues, and then they will they will ask you so many questions, and we cannot even explain. And then they will say, "It's the faith thing." Okay, then they're not going to accept you. Correct? So my point of saying is we have to learn knowledge. Allah say, Rabbi zidni ilma. Correct? You have to get knowledge. And then you have to do dua and tawakkul. Allah will help you. But if you don't do all those things, not necessarily you will get what you want. You will get it. Allah will decide when you need it. Allah will the best decider of your duas. Correct? Every dua is answered. But Allah will decide when to be given. Very important factor you need to understand. Okay. Can you ask the question? Somebody has a question.
Yeah, my question in it, self-esteem of a person totally depends on oneself or inner self, or it's affected by external factors. Like you have given an example of Sahaba.
in Jang-e Badr. So this is my question, that how our self-esteem, of course, is affecting by external factors, the
Yes,
society where we are living.
yes,
Yeah.
it does. But are you following the concept from psychology or following the concept from Islam? What's your concept coming from?
Yeah.
Yes, it is affected, but
Yeah.
you have to understand where the concept is coming. Because Sahaba were affected, Huzur Sallallahu was affected, means that he was criticized. But did they have low self-esteem? No. They have resilience, correct? Okay, what's the next question?
So can you talk about, explain a little bit more about the reactions that a low self-esteem person gives? I think that was a
I
big.
think so. I went into that in a slide which we have those features. Let me see which
Only if you have time. If you don't have time, it's okay.
means you have those features like what are the
Yeah.
uh,
No, not this one.
you cannot identify you feel down, you don't have your goals, correct, you feel rejection. These are the example of low self-esteem. You feel like you are not important person, correct, you blame yourself, correct. These are the common features of low self-esteem. You don't feel you're worth it.
So for example, there's a person who believes that his self-esteem is associated with the Islamic self-esteem. Now the problem of Palestine arose, and now he is gaining more consciousness about the principles of Islam, and then he looks at the world around him, and he finds out that all of the principles of Islam then they have not been followed. My culture and everything has been absolutely different from what Islam asks of me. And then even with trying hard, one is unable to fulfill the commandments of Allah. In such situation, in such circumstances, uh, if the self-esteem is going down, how to bring that back and how to normalize that self-esteem?
You have asked a very good question, and it comes from the seerah.
Uh-huh.
Didn't Huzur Sallallahu and Sahaba had this features? They were criticized. They cannot even speak the Arabic Quran. They were criticized. They were put down. Their business was taken away. Correct? That was in the seerah. You can see it. But their self-esteem never went down. They said, bring it on. I'm going to deal with you because my backing is Allah. Who is your backing doing? My backing is my Quran. My backing is my prophet. Who are you? You're going to do something on me? This is their self-esteem. Their self-esteem never goes down because they have belief and they have trust and they know what they're following. The problem is we don't fix our own problems and we are going around. So does anybody have read Quran and thoroughly knows it? A lot of people don't, right? Let's look at our own issues. We don't do what is required. We spend more time on TV and movies and knowing everything about the politics and everything. But if you ask the same question, how much you have spent every day on Islam, it will be minimum. I wish we have an iPhone quoting how many minutes we have done. Hours and hours we spent on gossiping other things, right? And then blame everything. So we have to fix our, I'm not talking about everybody, but usually people are doing that, correct? I want the people to change, start thinking properly, follow the Quran, believe in yourself, and Allah will help you. That's my way of thinking. Anybody has any other questions?
Can I just give an example of where Prophet ﷺ and the Sahabas took on, in the face of hardship, they didn't despair. They, for example, if they faced hunger, they didn't wait for food. They just tied stones to their stomach so they didn't feel the hunger, but it didn't deter them from their purpose. So that, that's the spirit of faith and Islam that's lacking now. As soon
Correct.
as we face the slightest, setback, we give up. We think that's it. All our education, all our money, all our health, all our, has come to nothing in the face of slightest setback.
You gave the perfect example. That's in the Sirah. So what is the correct definition? You look at, this is the exact definition of the self-esteem in Islam. You believe what you have, you believe in what you follow.
It's to know yourself. Where does your self-esteem lie? Does it lie with materialistic things, or does it lie in your faith in
Right.
Allah? If it lies with
Exactly.
materialistic things, as soon as they're taken away, you've lost everything. You're reduced to nothing.
Yeah,
But
so but then you're following the psychology concept, right?
if your faith lies in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then in all circumstances, in all storms and all sorts of, disasters, you'll come through. You'll be still standing strong.
Correct.
We have a feedback from Marion.
I'll share that with you in a while. inshallah.
Thank you.
Jazakallah khair. Mehreen, may we leave the meeting now?
Of course. Thank you so much. I'm just
Okay, Jazakallah.